Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today we're going to be doing a 2020 election prediction between Amy Klobuchar and Donald Trump. So, Amy Klobuchar is the senator from Minnesota. She's been in that position since about 2007, and she's currently one of the more likely contenders for the Democrats to run. So overall, I think that she'd probably be a pretty good Democrat for the Democratic Party to run, mostly because of her Rust Belt appeal, and if the Democrats want to really emphasize around the Rust Belt in 2020, since they did underperform very much in 2016. I think that Amy Klobuchar is their best shot, just because she's from Minnesota and she has a great Rust Belt appeal, and honestly she's one of the few Democrats we think has a shot at winning states like Iowa, just because of her rural and Midwestern and Rust Belt appeal and farmer appeal as well, and that's kind of the voter base you need in order to win states like Iowa. And with that said, I would consider her home state of Minnesota to be solid in her column. She has great appeal amongst Minnesota voters. She has a very high approval, according to the Morning Consult. And overall, I put Minnesota solidly in her column, mostly because of her home state advantage. In Georgia, I consider to be solidly in Trump's column, as a result of the same factors I've listed in the past, because Amy Klobuchar is neither African-American, nor does she have tremendous African-American appeal. And for that reason, I would not consider Georgia to be solidly in her column, or I would consider Georgia to be solidly in Trump's column for the fact that Amy Klobuchar I just don't think has a shot at winning a state like Georgia come 2020. New Hampshire, we just switch color palettes. New Hampshire I would call likely in Amy Klobuchar's column. And just before I start the video, I mean, I think one big factor for Amy Klobuchar, I think will be her women's appeal. And I know that many people will say that Hillary Clinton was said to have women's appeal, and yet she did not do tremendously well amongst women, or at least not as well as people expected her to. And that was really because Hillary Clinton many people saw her as untrustworthy, many people didn't see her as a good leader, and that really went against her women's appeal, and many women kind of voted for Trump out of spite because people were saying how, oh, you're a woman, you should vote for Hillary, and many women saw that messaging and wanted to go against that, and for that reason many voted for Trump. However, Klobuchar does not have many controversies in her past, especially not compared to Hillary, and I think that she could be a good candidate for women, and I think she could drive out women Democrats who are women especially, and for a state like New Hampshire, I think that's a very good campaigning strategy, so for that reason New Hampshire would be likely in her column. Same with Maine's 2 electoral votes. Maine's 2 electoral votes. For the same logic as New Hampshire, essentially, she can drive out registered Democrats, and she'd most likely win Maine at large, given her Rust Belt appeal. And I think that if you have Rust Belt appeal, you also have appeal to states like New Hampshire and Maine, just because they share many of the same ideals. So for that reason, Maine's 2 electoral votes likely in her column. Texas I consider to be likely in Trump's column, as I would for almost any other Democrat. Amy Klobuchar will not have great Hispanic appeal unless she nominates a Hispanic vice president, or Hispanic running mate rather. And even then, I don't think there's a good chance at her winning in this state. She does not have good minority appeal overall. That's one of the few cons to having her as a candidate. She won't have good minority appeal, and as her only shot at winning Texas, I think, is really emphasizing the low approval Trump's approval in the state is at positive margins, but I think her only shot is at driving turnout amongst Hispanics somehow. She would have to completely shift her political ideology, but maybe if she were to do that, and then if she were to drive out the anti-Trump vote, then maybe, but even then that's very unlikely, as it is for any other Democrat. Virginia I consider to be likely in Klobuchar's column, essentially just because of the main Democratic base in the state, which Klobuchar could very easily turn out to her side. As I've said before, the only way that the Republicans can win in this state is if the Democratic candidate is just god-awful, and Klobuchar is not a god-awful candidate. I think she's a very good candidate, and for that reason I consider Virginia to be likely in her column. Same with New Mexico, and same with Colorado, which I pretty much have the same logic for both of them. Democratic bases in both these states, their Latino turnout will be a factor, although not a big one, considering, like I said before, Klobuchar doesn't have tremendous minority appeal. But if Hillary Clinton could win in both these states, then Klobuchar can easily win in these states, especially in 2020. That's really the same logic that for almost any Democrat. I consider both these states to be likely in the Democrats' column, regardless of who they pick, almost regardless of who they pick as a candidate for 2020. Michigan, I consider to be likely in Klobuchar's column. And the reason why I'm calling the state so early is because Klobuchar does have great Rust Belt appeal, as I've said in the past, and I think that can definitely hold in Michigan, because I think that if she were to drive out the same appeal that she has in Minnesota, which is amongst farmers, amongst progressives especially, then she would be able to win Michigan, especially considering Trump's low approval in this state. Same with Wisconsin, which is another state I almost never call this early, but she's from the Rust Belt, she's from the region, and she can very easily have good appeal amongst voters in these states. And considering that Wisconsin has an even lower approval of Trump than Michigan does, then I consider it to be likely in our column for that reason as well. So already Klobuchar is very close to winning, and I think that really shows how much Democrats do need the Rust Belt in order to win in 2020. Honestly, I don't think there's a single way for Democrats to win in 2020 without states like Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, or a combination of the three. If they win one, lose another. I don't think there's a way for them to win in 2020 without holding the Rust Belt, and Klobuchar, honestly, is the best candidate for the Rust Belt, at least currently. And that's reflected with Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, as you can see here. So now we're going to get into the leans. I'm already in leaning, so Arizona, I put a lean in Trump's column, and the reason why it's not likely in Trump's column as it would be for most other Democrats is because I think Klobuchar can have great appeal amongst moderate Democrats in this state, and I think she really could pull over a significant number of moderate Republicans to her side as well, which would make this state competitive. And that's really the case throughout the United States. Klobuchar will turn out Democrats very easily, and she will turn out a number of moderate Republicans who don't support Trump to her side, I think, as well. And in a state like Arizona, which has a zero net approval of Trump, mostly because of the moderate Republicans not approving of Trump very well, and then thus not supporting him. If she's able to turn out those numbers, then I think this state can be competitive. However, I think the only way for this state to go in the Democrats' column is to have both that moderate Republican turnout and to have Hispanic turnout, and that's why the only candidate I put in the Democrats' column for is Julian Castro. And Klobuchar may be able to get support amongst moderate Republicans, but she will not be able to get support, or at least strong support and strong numbers amongst Hispanics. So for that reason, a lean in Trump's column. Pennsylvania, I would place a lean in Klobuchar's column as well. The only reason why I'm not, and that makes her the hypothetical next president, the only reason I'm not considering it to be likely is because I think that Trump can campaign better than Klobuchar, especially when it comes to grassroots in the state. And for that reason, I think that Klobuchar would not do tremendously well in maybe the more Midwestern areas of the state, which was the areas that Trump used to win in the state in 2016. And I think that Klobuchar could very easily make the same mistakes that Hillary Clinton did when it came to Pennsylvania, and really focus too much around the urban areas. So for that reason, I place it just a lean in her column. And I think that name recognition as well. Klobuchar doesn't have tremendous name recognition for a state like Pennsylvania. That's a big factor as well. Nevada, I place a lean in Klobuchar's column. I think that there's a decent chance that it could go to Trump, but the state does have a strong Democratic identity. I think that it could get close for Klobuchar just because she's not from the region, and she doesn't have tremendous appeal amongst Democrats in Nevada, and I think that that could cost her the state. But overall, strong Democratic identity, and overall, I think her women's appeal, which I'm kind of hesitant to say overall because people were saying that for Hillary Clinton that she would have women's appeal, and that ended up not being the case at all. But Klobuchar, I think, would have women's appeal. I think she would drive out women turnout in Nevada, and I think that could be a factor for her as well. Okay. Nebraska's second, I would place a lean in Klobuchar's column, and this comes down to her Midwestern appeal that I think she could very easily use in Nebraska's second and in Omaha as well. I think that Trump's low approval in Omaha could cost him the district regardless of who is the Democrat, and Klobuchar being from the region. I know that many people wouldn't consider Minnesota to be Midwestern, but it's a farmer state. It's a farmer state, and in places like Nebraska, places like Iowa, in the Midwest, do have a strong farming population that could turn out very strong for Klobuchar, and I think that could be a big factor for Nebraska's second, making a lean in her column. North Carolina, I placed a lean in Trump's column. This state now has a lower approval of Trump than it did last month, but even then, Klobuchar won't be able to turn out African Americans. She will, however, be able to turn out those moderate Republicans, which is the reason why the state has a low approval of Trump, just like Arizona has a low approval of Trump because of those moderate Republicans. I think she would be able to turn out a significant number of them to her side, but then she won't be able to turn out, I don't think she'll be able to turn out large numbers of African Americans, which would cost her the state, I think. However, it would become close as a result of those moderate Republicans living in suburban, affluent neighborhoods. And then Maine's second, I'm going to place a lean in Trump's column, and this comes down to just the district's strong support for Trump overall. I think that Klobuchar could make this district competitive for the same reason why Maine's 2 electoral votes would be in her column pretty solidly, because she does have strong, like I've said before, Rust Belt appeal does very much apply to Northeastern appeal, and I think she could campaign very well in Maine's second district, which is in the far north. But in the end, solidly in Trump's column, I'd call it a lean in his column in this case. And now for Florida, I call a lean in Amy Klobuchar's column, which really gives her the mandate she needs. Overall, I think she'd be able to turn out women's voters, like I'd said. The LGBT vote, which is a slight factor in this state, although not a huge one, but one I'm going to acknowledge regardless. There's a huge LGBT population in this state, and especially in areas like Orlando and Miami, which you could turn to our side. Hispanic turnout can be a factor, although Trump does have a large, I think a pretty decent approval in the state. I think it's either +5 or +6. This state is very unpredictable overall, and Klobuchar, I think, will be able to turn out the voters that she needs to win in this state, making a lean in her column. Ohio, I placed a very light lean in Trump's column. I think that Klobuchar, being from the Rust Belt, will be able to turn out a significant number of voters to her side, and a significant number of moderate Republicans. And the state currently is at -1 net approval of Trump, and I think she will be able to turn out the moderate Republicans and flip a number of Republicans who voted for Trump in 2016 to her side. But in the end, I'd still call it a lean in Trump's column, very narrowly. Iowa, I would consider to be a lean in Klobuchar's column. This comes down to the fact that this state has a negative approval of Trump. I believe it's at -6 or -7, which is very low for a state that went so solidly to Trump in 2016. And Klobuchar is from Minnesota, which is right above Iowa, and has the same kind of appeal to voters in Minnesota that one would have appeal to voters in Iowa. And I think that would put the state in her column. And this is really one of the few cases where I would put Iowa in the Democrats' column, which is surprising because Iowa does have a very low approval of Trump, considering that it is a state that went to him in 2016. But overall, I think there's not a lot of Democrats that could win this state, just because Democrats really are losing sight of trying to appeal to the farming vote, which is really the key to winning states like Iowa, and focusing mainly around urban centers and East Coast and West Coast areas, and that really loses appeal in places like Iowa. However, Amy Klobuchar would be able to appeal to the farming vote in this state, considering that she is not one of those Democrats. Overall, as you can see here, Amy Klobuchar takes the presidency with 314 electoral votes. I think she would be a great candidate. I think she really would, and it really comes down to this area over here, how good she would do in the Rust Belt, because she is a Rust Belt politician, and I think she would be able to do very well in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, which, like I've said, are states that the Democrats need very much to win in 2020, and she is the candidate for the Rust Belt. If the Democrats want to take back the Rust Belt, if that's their strategy at least, then Amy Klobuchar is their candidate. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This was suggested by someone a while ago. I forget their name. I should have written it down, but thank you, whoever you are, for suggesting this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, comment, share, subscribe. It's the only way for small channels like mine to grow. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a good day. See ya.